for everything that you have accomplished in the last year. I think it's wonderful that you're coming to church, and congratulations. I am here this evening to talk to you about Catholic social teaching, a little bit about what I do in my role in working for the 3 dioceses in Colorado, and answer any questions that you might have. It's sort of a topic in an area that a lot of you might not know a lot about. Most of you probably have never heard of the Colorado Catholic Conference. And so I want to explain a little bit about what that is, how you can get involved, and then answer any questions that you might have. I want it to be a really casual conversation, so if you have questions while I'm speaking, please feel free to raise your hand or interrupt or whatnot. I know that some of the terminology might be things that you're not familiar with, so if I'm talking and you don't understand what I'm saying or you don't know what I'm referring to, please feel free to stop me. So I'm the executive director of the Colorado Catholic Conference, and the Catholic Conference is the public policy and lobbying arm of the 3 Catholic dioceses in Colorado. So what that means practically for me is that I'm at the state capitol every day when Colorado's legislature is in session, lobbying on issues that are important to the bishops and the church here in Colorado. So the big ones, of course, that I'm sure all of you would be familiar with: family life, marriage. Those are, of course, big issues for the bishops and the church. But we also deal with a lot of other issues that I don't think a lot of people think about on a day-to-day basis, and that would be things like cemetery legislation, schools, bingo, poverty, you name it. There are a million issues that we deal with at the Capitol every legislative session that have to do with the church and affect the church and its different entities. And so the bishops have a voice in that through my work at the Capitol and through the involvement of people like yourselves who get involved and make your voices heard at the state Capitol. When we take positions on issues, I want to talk a little bit about how we come to make a decision in my office about what bills we'll support or oppose and why. And a lot of that is all based on Catholic social teaching. And I know that a lot of you have already been introduced to Catholic social teaching, and so at least have a broad concept of what those principles are. I brought some handouts with just the themes again of Catholic social teaching that you're welcome to take before you leave, just to highlight a little bit more about what the church's teachings are. But what we do is we look at the different pieces of legislation and we decide, based on Catholic social teaching and the principles articulated in that teaching, what kind of position we'll take on any given piece of legislation. Whether it's dignity of human life, that encompasses a lot, as you can imagine, whether it's solidarity, whether it's the environment. There's a lot of different issues that the church's voice is asked for. And there's a lot of times when the church's voice isn't asked for, but we talk anyways. So as you can imagine, some of the issues that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis are fairly controversial, and not often ones that a lot of people at the state legislature necessarily want to hear the church's voices on. But that makes it all the more important that our voices are heard. I want to talk a little bit too about how you can get involved in terms of this process. For those of you, I know a lot of people when they first hear about politics, especially, it's stuff that they just kind of stay away from and say, I'm good, let somebody else deal with it. Politics is not an area that I necessarily want to get involved in. But what I would encourage all of you to do is to at least explore getting involved in politics in a very little way even. And that could be contacting your legislator, sending an email about a piece of legislation that you might support or feel passionate about, or that you oppose for whatever various reason, because it does make a huge difference. And I can't stress that enough, especially at the state level. A lot of times legislators at the state level don't get a lot of constituent contact. They're not hearing from the voters on a regular basis. And so when they start to get a lot of phone calls or a lot of emails about any particular issue, they start to pay attention to it. And that does have a tremendous impact on the church's ability to either pass legislation or stop bad legislation. And that's because of all of you. When legislators aren't hearing from people, I can go and talk till I'm blue in the face and tell legislators, this is how the church feels, this is how the people in the pews feel. But if people in the pews aren't actually contacting their legislators, it sort of falls on deaf ears. So I would really encourage all of you, it's a fairly easy process to The Colorado Catholic Conference has a legislative network that you can sign up for. You get email alerts. You can download our app on your phone or iPad and get alerts that way. But we make it really simple for you just to copy, paste, send a message, and you're done, and that's it. And legislators, although they might not respond to every single email you send or every single phone call, what they do is keep a tally of where their constituents are at. So how many in favor, how many against, and it can make a really tremendous difference. When I first got here, one of the first years I was here in Colorado lobbying for the bishops, we had a bill regarding parental rights for different types of education. And they were trying to take away some of the parental involvement. And so our churches got involved and said, you know, we don't want this to pass. And it had all the votes to pass. It passed out of committee. We fully expected we were going to have a really uphill battle. People responded just incredibly to our call for action. And I had legislators stopping me in the hallway saying, tell your people to stop, I got it. Like, I promise I'll change my vote. So it does make a difference to send that email, to make that phone call. And that's why I would encourage all of you as Catholics and as citizens, we really have a duty to participate in public life. The notion that there's somehow a vast separation between church and state, and that means that you can never, as a Catholic, participate in public life is just false. That's a false argument that people use to try to say, don't be involved, or we don't want to hear your voice because it's an unpopular one, maybe, on any particular issue. So I would encourage you that when you hear those kind of things, to get involved anyways and still make your voice heard on the issues that are really important and follow. Many people have no clue what's happening at the state capitol on a daily basis. Legislation moves very quickly. In Colorado, we have 120 days session every year, and that's to get every bill passed or killed or something happens with the legislation. Every legislator in Colorado is able, we have 100 legislators between the House and the Senate. Every single one of them is entitled to bring 5 bills forward every session. They can get permission to bring more. So as you can imagine, it's a lot of bills that we're dealing with in a very short time period. And so it is important that you be aware of what's happening. And even if you don't agree with the church on every issue, people often say, well, you know, I agree with your position that you took on this bill, but I'm not going to agree with you on that bill. So therefore, I'm just not going to participate because I don't agree on everything that the bishops say. And I always tell people that's fine. You don't have to agree on every position the church takes on any particular issue, but take the particular issues amongst all the issues that the church deals with. I know that all of you will be able to find 1 or 2 that you do agree with the church on, and be involved in those issues and watch for those issues and see where the church is involved and how you can get involved in all of those issues. One of the first things that I did when I moved to Colorado and started the job is went up to the Capitol and introduced myself to all the legislators. And one of the senators sat me down and he said, well, you know, where are the Catholics? And I said, well, I don't know. Are they not here? Are they not calling? What's the problem? And he said to me that the year before in the legislative session, they had a lot of bills, as you can imagine. The bill that he got the most phone calls and the most emails on was a bill to regulate horse massage therapy in Colorado. And I had the same sort of reaction. I laughed and thought, okay, this obviously must be a Colorado thing. I don't know. Horse massage therapy must be very important to people here. But what it made me realize after I thought about it a little bit is how sad that was. That out of all of the literally thousands of bills that the legislature was dealing with that session, that was the one that he got the most phone calls on and the most emails. Now, I'm not saying that it's not important to a segment of people in Colorado, but again, when you probably look at all of the bills that we were dealing with, I'm sure there were many more important issues during that legislative session than horse massage therapy. So I just share that story with all of you to highlight, really, I cannot stress the importance of getting involved and of being involved in the process and doing it from a perspective of your faith. It's an important voice. And I always tell people that if our voice is not at the Capitol, someone else's will be. That's just a fact. Any day of the week, you can go up to the Capitol and see lots and lots of people with lots of different agendas, with lots of different positions on many different issues. And some of them will agree with us wholeheartedly on things, and some of them won't. And whoever's voice seems to be the loudest that day usually is the one that is able to get legislation passed and make things happen at the Capitol. And so that's why it is important that we all take an active interest in being involved in the process at the state Capitol. There's a lot of issues that we will continue to deal with and that we are dealing with. Currently, this legislative session, just to share with you some of the more recent events and issues that we've been dealing with. This past legislative session, we had a bill that would have legalized physician-assisted suicide in the state of Colorado. And for those of you that don't know a lot about the issue, if you've heard of Brittany Maynard, who was a young woman, not quite 30, who killed herself in November of 2014 because she had found out that she was diagnosed with terminal cancer. So she and her husband moved to Oregon, where it was legal to take your life, and she killed herself. And it was a very big topic. It was a very, very big event. It dominated the media all over the country for a long time. And so that bill was coming to Colorado so that people could utilize assisted suicide here in Colorado. Again, we did not think that we would be able to stop it until it got to the Senate. Through the activity of the parishes, honestly, what it was, we had legislators literally inundated. They could not keep up with the number of phone calls that they were getting from people asking them to oppose the bill. We ended up getting 2 Democrats to change their vote. They had originally told all of us lobbyists that they were going to support the bill so that it could go to the floor of the House and have a big, full debate. We were able, through, again, people contacting them to really show them that the will of the people of Colorado was not to legalize assisted suicide here. And so we were successful with that. And that, I think, goes to show that it is really possible for, as I think downtrodden as we get sometimes about the state of politics, not only here, but in our country. We think maybe we can't make a difference, or our phone call or our email doesn't matter. It makes a huge difference when it comes to especially some of these really important, vital areas of policy that we all have a stake in, and that we're all going to be affected by at some point or another. So that's one of the big, I think, victories that we were able to have this legislative session. One of the other bills that we're currently dealing with that I'm sure you've heard at least a little bit about is a bill that was introduced actually yesterday in response to Michelle Wilkins in Longmont, who had her baby cut out of her and the baby died. In Colorado, we do not recognize a child, an unborn child, as a second victim of crimes when crimes like that are committed. So therefore, the folks that are prosecuting the perpetrator won't be able to charge her with any crimes relating to baby Aurora. They are charging her with numerous crimes. That's wonderful, and it's great to see, but we feel that the church feels that there needs to be some justice for unborn victims of crime, like baby Aurora. And so we're working hard to hopefully get a fetal homicide bill passed in Colorado this legislative session. It's an important piece of legislation. We have 37 states currently that have this type of legislation. The federal government has a fetal homicide bill. And so we're hopeful that Colorado will sort of come with the majority and get on the right side of this issue and pass their own fetal homicide statute during this legislative session. So those are 2 of the really big issues that we dealt with. And then obviously a lot of other minor issues that are still very important, that will have significant impacts on a lot of people. Some of them that didn't pass, some of them that did. One of the ones that we're watching that will be, I'm sure, a major issue next year is tax credits for private education. Colorado is sort of seen as one of the next possible states that could enact some school choice type of legislation. We had a fairly large 3-day debate on the Senate floor about school choice and tax credits and the legality of all of it and the constitutionality of all of it. And more than likely next year, it's going to be an even bigger debate because there'll be more legislation brought forward on that. We had some issues dealing with the environment and poverty. The environmental bill is in regards to President Obama's clean power bill or clean power standards that he would like all states to enact and come up with their own plan. So we supported that and the state implementation of that type of legislation. There's a lot, as you can see, that the church has a say in and is able to